Okay, last class we looked at the late antique and early Christian world, and today we shall proceed with the Byzantine world by concentrating primarily on the 6th century and the Emperor Justinian. But it would be useful to remind us of some of the latest achievements of Roman architecture in the late antique period, in the 4th century, and we looked at the so-called basilica of Maxentius and or Constantine, because both Maxentius and Constantine were involved in the building of this basilica. And in this basilica, very much like the Roman bath buildings, we see the usage of pozzolana, the application of enormous vaults, utilizing as a last spurt the Roman architectural lessons that had been learned during the last 2 centuries. And we said that this building represents the change in the attitude, whereby there's a diffusion of building types. Even though what we saw is a basilica, the interior could very well have been a bath. The same vaulting system, barrel vaults, groin vaults, huge openings, and then very rich interior decoration, utilizing frescoes, utilizing columns and arches. So we have this last burst of activity, this last burst of aggrandized architecture with huge interior spaces, very large interiors. And we said that it was during this time that the clarity of events, the clarity of life in the Roman Empire began to receive blows. The lack of confidence began to set in because there were attacks at the borders. The economy was receiving blows. The taxes were not coming in. So gone were all those confident days. And if the state of affairs can be an index to how artistic creativity is affected, then these late antique portraits, like that of Constantine and like those of Licinius, which we saw last week, can point to a greater simplicity. The plastic articulation has gone, giving its way to more massive representations with enlarged eyes. So you see the forehead arranged in a very simple ways. The locks of hair are almost like the voussoirs of an arch. And the grim, tightly set lips also point to a kind of attitude that was prevalent in the era. Most recognizable, though, are the large inset eyes. And the largening of the eyes points to a spiritual outlook and a more introverted attitude. So the more spiritual attitude, the more introverted attitude is emphasizing certain simplified notions on the exterior, which explains the way the portrait is constituted. This is even more emphatic in the portrait of Licinius, where you have deeply set grooves along the forehead. The eyes are even more linear than those of Constantine. The lips are even tighter. The beard and the hair are chiseled. So we have a rather linear art, This is not a quality which we can call a lesser art. It's a different attitude in representation, giving clues about the mentality of the period. Even more emphatic are the statues of the tetrarchs in a gesture of embrace to Augusti and two assistant Caesar emperors. They also have their large eyes, their lips are tightly set. The overall proportioning is also rather squat, rather different than the proportioning of the ideal classical figures that we saw in Greek and Roman art. So there's a big change that is going on. A close-up view of the detailing of the face here. Look at the forehead, the simplified crowns on the heads. These are worried emperors. They are worried about the state of affairs. This is a time when the emperors did not know how long their rule would last. They kept changing all the time, and the future was not at all certain. Very different than the classical compositions that we saw earlier. Looking at Augustus, the first Roman emperor, you see the very fine, almost classicizing Greek-like arrangement of the drapery with finely delineated folds, and the proportioning of the figures is quite different when compared to the late antique depictions that we saw. This attitude of simplification, this attitude of a more linear approach is seen also in architectural moldings. When you compare the classical molding with the late antique architectural molding here, you can see that the more fleshy volumetric rendering in this molding here is reduced to a flatter and more linear rendering of the very same motif. Another example showing a shallow relief, again from the early Augustan period, where you see a floral motif, a motif of plants which is stylized, and then that stylized motif becomes reduced to the simplest essentials. You have spirals here as well, but the spirals here are more didactic. They are simplified, and they are rendered and reduced into a very tight geometric scheme, also including symbols of Christianity, showing the rising importance of Christianity. Excuse me. In the typologies of buildings, when we look at an example like the Curia in Rome, we see this even better as a comparison with the portraits of Constantine and Licinius. Within this monumental space, we have the barest essentials. The seating areas of the senators are rendered very, very clearly. There are some niches for the placement of statues, but all in all, the huge surfaces of the walls are devoid of the intricate and sophisticated vaults that we saw in the peak of the Roman architectural achievement. There is hardly any place where the attention can focus on. You have huge barren surfaces, and the eye glides in one glance throughout the space. There's no detail of decoration, no detail in the articulation of the wall, which will magnetize the gaze of the beholder of the space. The outside of the building is a box, as you can see. No vaults, no intricate scalloped domes of any kind. So the simplicity that we see in the statuary is also to be seen in certain buildings of the period, like the Curia as well. Elsewhere in the empire as well, in Spalato, in Split, the palace of Diocletian looks almost like an army camp. The different functions like the church, mausoleum, the palace quarters are all tightly organized in a very military-like scheme, very, very didactic. And this paves the way to the emergence of the early Christian architecture. Like we said in the last class, the Christian faith and the practicing of the Christian faith had been done secretly because they were prosecuted by the Roman authorities. And when Christianity started to come into the open after the Edict of Milan in 313 AD, when Christianity became legal to practice, then the Christians came out into the open, and they needed to have a congregational space in which to come together for their prayers. Initially, when the religion was not out in the open, devout Christians had been gathering in houses, in conspicuous, modest structures, in places like Dura Europos in the east. But when Christianity became legal, the choice of building type was the basilica. We have seen a few examples of basilicas, and the basilica is a rather neutral building type. It could be used for commercial purposes, it could be used as a shelter, it could be used for legal purposes, and it was devoid of some of the imagery that the rich Roman imperial structures embodied. So it is not at all surprising that the basilica was taken as a desirable building type and converted into the early Christian basilica. So in the very early post-Constantinian age, in the 4th and 5th centuries AD, we find that the basilica of St. Peter's in Rome is a rectangular structure, very, very simple. It has a longitudinal processional axis terminating in the apse, so it has a rather strong directionality regulated by the apse, and it is flanked by double or single aisles on both sides. In St. Peter's, we have two aisles flanking the nave. And the whole basilica is preceded by a courtyard, so you have a gradual progression from the profane into the semi-sacred and then into the sacred, where the Christians gathered. When you look at the nave proper, you will see that it is the raised part. The walls of the nave are raised above the double aisles in the case of St. Peter's in order to allow what we call clerestory lighting. You had seen this in the hypostyle hall of the mortuary complexes in Egypt. There are also perforations, windows along the aisles, so light comes in a rather mysterious way. It's not flooded with light, it is semi-dark, and the light that comes in is a spiritual kind of light, very appropriate for the Christians who are congregated for their worshiping. In the case of St. Peter's, there are two components. One is the memorial space, which is a mausoleum for the martyr, a funerary building which has a commemorative purpose and which is circular in plan, and then the congregational space of the basilica for the devout Christians. And in this regard, we also have to pay attention to the transverse axis here, but a cross is not yet created. Even though we have the transverse axis close to the apse, the emphatic directionality in this case is not at all hindered, and it is not affected. Here you see again a closer view of St. Peter's, which was added on later centuries, becoming into the huge structure that we know today. But this was the original foundation of St. Peter's. And it is significant to emphasize that this is a reaction to the Roman profligacy, the Roman richness, and everything that is represented by Rome. So it's quite understandable that the vaults are not there. The rich architectural spaces are not there, and we have a reversion to the simple pitched roof, which is wooden, again, which is in keeping with the early Christian spirit when Christianity came into the open. In the St. Paul's Church also, you see the pitched roof, but some marble colonnades are being used to define the nave and to separate the nave from the aisles. And this kind of attitude continued in a simplified way in different parts of the Roman Empire, or what remained of it. And in Trier, for example, in Germany, we see a kind of simplicity in two stories of the basilica there, with the apse, the openings, reminding us a little bit of the Roman lessons that were learned, but now utilized in the service of Christian worship in a rather simplified manner. So the Roman lessons were not entirely forgotten, but the move is toward a greater simplicity. So during the 4th and 5th centuries, there was a lot of turmoil. Territories were lost, and as we mentioned last class, the capital of the Roman Empire was moved to the east. A new city was founded by Constantine in Byzantium, which is Istanbul today, and was named as Constantinople after Constantine, the emperor. And what Constantine did was to try to keep the Roman Empire alive with a Christian ingredient, or what was left of it. But he could not prevent the loss of territories. And for about 200 years, this state of unsettled, unsteady situation continued. In the 6th century, however, a new emperor comes to the throne. He is Justinian, and we think that this period, this ivory, the depiction, belongs to Justinian. It's not absolutely certain, but the equestrian, that is, emperor mounted on a horse, triumphal depiction points to Justinian. And it is the reason it is thought this might be Justinian is that it reflects to a certain extent the powerful nature of the rule. And we know that Justinian reconquered some of the lost territories. Some of the territory in Italy was brought back into the rule of Justinian. So what was initiated by Constantine as a Christianized Roman emperor is being continued by Justinian. But the developments, which were military, and the bettering of the economy, which made it possible to have a powerful imperial system again, were not sufficient to go back to Rome and to make Rome the capital again. Rome was spent. This was gone. So what Justinian tried to do was to consolidate Constantinople as a center of rule and power, an imperial center in the east. But he also spent some of his attention in the west, in Italy, but not in Rome, in Ravenna. He felt that the image of Rome had become tarnished, so his projects were to spend entirely on Ravenna, north of Rome. And when we look at these projects, it is quite interesting. They are not palaces, they are not civic structures, but the three projects in Ravenna are two basilicas and one church. Two longitudinal basilicas, one of which you see on the screen, and a centralized church. So the confidence which came back with a rather consolidated rule during the time of Justinian is now being reflected in the artworks again. Perhaps the building type that you see is the basilica, not very different than the early Christian basilica. I mean, we are talking about the 6th century, and in the 200 years that passed, the early Christian basilica and the model of the early Christian basilica has hardly changed at all. This is a later addition, so disregard that. But the church here, the basilical church here, Saint Apollinare in Classe, is a very conservative traditional building type. There are no vaults, no richnesses. In the same manner as the early Christian basilica, you have a central nave with the heightened part for the clerestory lighting, and then you have the aisles on both sides. But there is one contribution which Justinian brought into effect in these projects in Ravenna and elsewhere, as we shall see, and that is the introduction of mosaic art into the interiors of the churches. And now that Christianity had become imperialized, the official religion of the Roman rulers, we find that the rather modest and the rather subdued architectural vocabulary and its decoration that we had seen in the early Christian period is giving way to a greater imperial richness. During the time of Justinian, it was possible, just like in the Roman Empire, to bring marbles from different parts of the Byzantine world. It was possible to hire mosaic artists in the service of the decoration of the churches, like the basilica of the church of the Saint Apollinare in Classe. So when we look at the San Apollinare in Classe here, what we see is the typical longitudinal basilical church, like the early Christian basilical church, but with a greater richness. The polychromatic, marble with the arches, and then the decoration of the apse, not with an imperial motif of the emperor, but with a Christian motif. So, stories from the Bible, images of Christ, images that propagate Christianity are now finding their place into the religious architecture, which is under the sanction of the imperial court. I mean, Justinian is propagating this art, but the imagery is beginning to change. So, in the apse decoration here, what we see is a metaphorical representation of Christ, the good shepherd. He is representing the person who is to set humanity on the right track. And the lambs, the sheep that you see here, are the 12 apostles, Havariler. And these apostles, together under the guidance of Christ, are going to set humanity on the right track. And it is done in mosaic art. The cross at the highest point is very, very noticeable. But the way this is depicted is in a certain imperial richness, made possible by the re-awakening of the confidence, the imperial confidence. So now we have the imperial the richness, but the imperial richness is in tandem with the increased power of Christianity, which is official. So we have the polychromatic marble here, and within the apse of San Apollinare in Classe, we have Christ and the cross above, but immediately below in the apse, you also have a depiction of Justinian and his court. So the imperial court is now in the same highlighted position, but lower than the hierarchy of Christ, but it is being singled out, showing that Christianity and imperialism are going together in a parallel kind of fashion. But the mosaic art that we see here is rather simple and linear. The mosaic panel is composed of thousands of small little fragments which are called tessera. I mean, thousands of tesserae. So the tesserae which are stuck onto the surface of the wall tend to create an uneven surface which breaks up light. So the light coming in a diffused manner from the clerestory windows is reflected on the tesserae, and the tesserae sort of begin to sparkle because it is broken into 1,000 directions, and you have this rather ethereal, unreal surface which is constantly flickering. And within that surface, you have the golden colored tesserae. You have in the early Byzantine period, during the time of Justinian in the 6th century, a rather linear form of mosaic. The sheep and the hides of the sheep are done in this rather scaled fashion. The spaces are filled with the vegetation without any regard to the scale here. There are just fillers of space. but nevertheless, it is an important example where the mosaic art is finding an avenue for development within the religious architecture in the basilicas and the churches. So we have a new member of the class, but I can't convince her to sit. She is trying to decide. We have the, we are not interested in this class, and the cat has decided to go to another class. Okay, so we have the cross at the topmost part of the apse in San Apollinare in Classe. And you look at the cross studded with precious jewelry. So this is a very the imperialized version of Christian art. It is done not with simplicity, but with richness to show the power of Christianity. You have spiritual power, but you also have material power, which is made possible by the sanction of the emperor, the court of Justinian. Another view of the background, you see that the scale of the birds, the vegetation, the rocks, none of them are done to, according to a real scale. They are just sprinkled in the background, which is typical for this early period art. When we look at the second church, San Apollinare Nuovo, the first one we saw was San Apollinare in Classe. This is San Apollinare Nuovo. You see that it is even simpler, more simple. You have the apse, you have a single nave, and you have the aisles on both sides. The plan type is not at all progressive. The plan type is not novel. It's conservative and traditional, propagating the idea of the early Christian basilica. But just like San Apollinare Classe, the San Apollinare Nuovo also has some superb examples of mosaic. The mosaic art, which gives a splendid example of the marriage of art and architecture. The depiction of saints in the middle level of the basilica accentuates the horizontality and the directionality of the colonnades toward the apse. So you have an emphatic horizontal direction, which without question directs everyone toward the apse. But you also, that horizontality is reflected in the aisles, and then the horizontality of the panels, the clerestory lighting. But you also have some vertical accents. The vertical accents of the columns is continued with the vertical stance of the saints on both sides. And it is even further continued by the clerestory lighting of the thin and tall windows in the third level. So the lighting that comes in from the clerestory falls on the mosaic panels. It also lights the polychromatic columns leading toward the apse. And the golden colored background of the mosaics, as I mentioned earlier, is broken into 1,000 fragments of light. So you see the female saints moving toward the apse, but in the mosaic panel, they are actually moving toward enthroned Christ. And the rhythmic repetition of the columns is continued, as I said, with the rhythmic progression of the saints in the same direction. The space fillers between the elongated windows also are long, tall, and narrow figures continuing this vertical accent, preventing the space from becoming static. So a very traditional and conservative space is becoming dynamic due to the arrangement of the mosaic the composition and the arrangement of the figures within the composition. Just like Saint Apollinare Classe, in Saint Apollinare Nuovo as well, you see the richness in the imperialized Christianity. Christ is enthroned on a jeweled throne. You see the precious mother of pearl and other the precious jewelry studded on the throne, and he is seated with the majesty of an emperor. And the figures are moving toward Christ, the male saints on one side and the female saints on the other side, and they are all set against the background of golden mosaics composed of tesserae. And Justinian, or the period of Justinian, is when the golden colored mosaics made a revolution in the effect of interior space. The Romans did not use this to the same extent. They used the mosaics in the baths, but the golden mosaics, tesserae, and the backgrounds created by the golden colored mosaics bring a new mysterious definition to the church with the help of diffuse light. So the light reflected on the mosaics creates a source of light which is flickering, which is the unreal in a way, which dissolves the wall and which enhances the spiritual atmosphere within the church. But other than that, the depiction of the figures and then the plants, the palms in this case, are rather linear. There's nothing fleshy, there's no perspective here whatsoever. You have a rather confused idea of what is the foreground, what is the background. There is this unreal flickering kind of space which highlights the saints with the halos above their heads. But other than that, the clarity of the depictions is such that you have this unreal, mysterious, spiritual space, which is not very clear cut, and it is done on purpose. On the other side, facing the male saints, you have the female saints, and they are progressing toward Virgin Mary, the seated Virgin Mary, while the male saints are progressing toward the seated Christ. The three magi who announced the birth of Christ also find their way in this mosaic panel. They are bearing gifts, and Virgin Mary with the Christ child on her lap is also enthroned on a bejeweled throne, a very rich, conveying of the power of Christianity. A closer view here showing the jewelry of the throne of Virgin Mary. But like the male saints, the female saints and Virgin Mary, they also have rather linear depictions in the 6th century, which is a far cry from the evolution that the Byzantine mosaic art will reach once we get to the 11th and 13th centuries. Looking at the female saints, Their garments catch the attention, richly embroidered and also studded with jewels. They also convey a kind of imperial richness. So this shows the Christianized imperial, seat of authority, which is also reflecting itself on the imagery of Christianity, Christian art at that time. They are also quite linear. They also have the palms in the background, like the Christian saints. The third project in Ravenna, in addition to San Apollinare in Classe and then the San Apollinare Nuovo, is the San Vitale, which is on the screen right now. San Vitale is a very unusual structure. In contrast to the conservatism, the architectural conservatism of the longitudinal church, the centralized church of San Vitale combines the liturgical requirements of the Christian worship together with some lessons that were learned from Rome. So the richness is not simply in the mosaic program within the church, as we see in San Apollinare Classe and San Apollinare Nuovo, but we also have a very rich architectonic creation in San Vitale. So you have a circular structure, but there are different volumes that emanate from a heightened central volume in a cascade-like flow. So from the heightened central part of the church, you have the emanation of these very varied forms in a sophisticated manner, and the volume tends to flow outward in the form of the rectangular entities, the cubical entities, as well as more polygonal entities. It's like space is flowing outwards, stage by stage, in a rich orchestration of different forms. But it is all very unified within a centralized scheme. The identities of each one of the exterior components are quite delineated. When you see that the edges have moldings, as you see here, so you have right-angled entities, you have curvilinear entities, and very creative, varied, and heterogeneous combination of all. Very, very rich. But they all are made to fuse and integrate within a centralized scheme. So you have the individuality of each one of the parts, but this individuality does not compete with other components. Quite to the contrary, they all tend to melt into one central scheme, which is made possible by this extraordinary plan. So the center of the plan is rather clear. It is the focus where all the other sophisticated arrangements and flowerings of different forms, oblique views, are made to coordinate with each other. The system of support, having these wedges here, wedge-shaped piers, creating scallops, contribute to the creation of sophisticated vistas. So, looking, from here, you have a lit central space. You have the scallop And then through the two columns, you have this ambulatory space, which envelopes all around the interior of the building. Even though this is a centralized structure, what is rather unusual is that it has a directionality, because the privileged side is where the apse is. So you have an entrance, the ambulatory, the oblique views, which attract you to the center, but the directionality is created by the apse, which is privileged above all the other parts of this centralized church, not only with its architectural form, but also with the hierarchy of the mosaic compositions, the mosaic panels which are placed there. So, looking at the interior of the San Vitale, you have an incredible array of rich interior surfaces, not just with polychromy, different colors, but with textures as well. You have shining, glossy, smooth marble surfaces, juxtaposed with the basket capitals, which are rather emphatic accents within the interior. And then you have the mosaic panels, which cover every square centimeter of the space. So it's almost like space becomes an icon itself. It's almost as if we are talking about a three-dimensional icon. All of space is an icon, because there's a horror of empty space. Nothing has been left empty. No matter where you look from, you are confronted with the lit up area in the center, and then you have darker areas beyond the twin columns of the scallops. But within the apse, again, you have a composition which places Justinian and his court in a sphere where they are perceived together with Christ. Even though the emperor is emphasizing his juxtaposition with the representation of Christianity, though, the hierarchy is quite clear. The apse is where this is conveyed, but the emperor, together with his imperial court and his bishop, is below. Opposite the emperor is his wife, Theodora, the empress, also with her imperial retinue, and the truly Christian themes depicting the rise of Christ, the cross, the apotheosis of Christ are on top. So the emperor, the image of the emperor is significant, on a par with the Christian imagery within the apse, but it is set up lower than that of Christ. It is not on the same level. So this is a kind of visual literacy conveyed through an interior, a rich interior, done in a rather rich, architectural articulation. And this is how the messages are conveyed. So you have the Justinian in full imperial regalia, complete with his throne, with his crown, and then the golden colored tesserae on the background. And this is a microcosmic world. And this microcosmic world is accentuated with the stage-like depiction, the frame created all around this panel, again studded with jewels, gives the idea as if they are on the stage of a theater. So this, stage-like metaphor is quite a useful one to bring the image of the emperor to the perception of the followers who happen to enter the church. And on the opposite panel, facing the panel of Justinian, is the panel of Theodora, the empress. And in an even more emphatic way than the panel of Justinian, the theatricality and the stage-like quality, together with the curtains here, the curled-up curtains, the baldacchino, a kind of small dome, another curtain which is revealing a fountain on a column, is again emphasizing this theatricality of the whole scene. The Justinian and Theodora are making an appearance. The palatial setting of the emperor and his wife, perhaps the court at Constantinople, is being conveyed to the people in the western part of the empire, where the imperial seat of rule was not. So the imagery is conveying the imperial power. But this imperial power is under the sanction of Christian rule, the Christian belief. It's a very Christianized Roman empire that we have. A close-up view of Theodora shows the arrangement of the tesserae, which are quite large. From a distance, they look very well regulated. But looking at the depiction of the face, the eyes, and then the arrangement of the tesserae in the halo, or in general in the panels of Justinian and Theodora, we see an early stage of the mosaic art, where the tesserae are still quite large. There's still a considerable linearity, and this is good to keep in mind, because when we come to the 11th and 13th centuries, and when we look at the mosaic panels of the Hagia Sophia and Saint Saviour in the Chora in Istanbul today, we will see the difference in several centuries. Here we are not yet so painterly. The tesserae are still stuck to the surface of the wall. So you have in the apse the panels of the Justinian, and then facing him the panel of Theodora, and then they are above, they are below the kingdom of Christ, the kingdom of the heavens. You see the risen Christ, you see the angels here, and the trio is quite important, but the imperial power is not yet on a par with the religious power, but nevertheless it is being conveyed in the same apse. In the overall configuration of the church of San Vitale, as I said a moment ago, the textures, the mosaic panels, the lack of any empty space, the contrast with glossy, shining surfaces and textured surfaces create a very rich interior. The articulation here and the quality of light, which becomes very varied depending on the different surfaces which are further defined, enhances the spiritual quality of this particular church. Another contribution is the basket capitals. these basket-like capitals are typical of the Byzantine age in the 6th century AD. They are no longer like the Doric, Ionic, or Corinthian capitals. They are rather block-like, and on them they have these lace-like figures carved on them, often with Christian symbols, and they also create different accents within the church, richly decorated with mosaics. Now, what was happening in the East? I mean, we said that Justinian was reconquering the lands of the former Roman Empire that had been lost. He came as far as Ravenna, and he abandoned Rome, instead choosing to lavish his attention and his craftsmen and architects in the north, in Ravenna. Well, the court was in Constantinople, the city of Constantine, but the creative experiments that were going on can be seen in various contexts. The juxtaposition of basilicas with centralized plans, different eclectic variations of these architectural experiments can be seen in various parts of the eastern part of the empire, in Constantinople and elsewhere. So when we look at Ephesus, one of the very intriguing examples is the Basilica of Saint John. In the Basilica of Saint John here, you see like San Apollinare Nuovo or Classe, a longitudinal basilica. Like St. Peter's, there is a courtyard preceding the basilica proper. There is a transverse arm, but the similarity stops there. What we have instead is a plan, a longitudinal plan, which when we expect a pitched roof, does not show that. Instead of the pitched roof, we have a series of small domes which are placed above the roof. So there is a compartmentalization of the space. You have a longitudinal the axis going toward the apse, but instead that horizontality is not paralleled within the roof structure. You have the movement from the court into the apse here. You have the transverse arm of the basilica. But instead of the pitched roof, you have a compartmentalization of space, not only where the two arms, the arm of the apse and the transverse arm, where they cross, you might expect a dome, a kind of centralization, but you don't have that. Instead, all the compartments, carried by piers, are sectioned into small compartments. So you have the movement here, but you also have the differentiation of the different units. So it's a kind of compromise that we are talking about here. And when you look at it in section, you see that quite clearly. The movement toward the apse, but then each compartment is limited by the little domical roof that is on top of it, together with the transverse arm of the basilica. Today, if you go to the St. John Basilica, you can see it in Ephesus. It has been partially restored. Aggressively in these examples is trying to have centralized the spaces. The basilica is evolving. First, you have the longitudinal basilica, and then you have the basilica with the transverse arms. You have the cross arms. Then you have the centralized plans, which are, plans around octagons, based around an octagon or hexagon or, whatever. And gradually, we are going toward a domed basilica, which is a contribution of the Byzantine architects that we have. And perhaps when we come closest to this new arrangement is when we look at Saint Sergius and Bacchus in Istanbul today, which has been converted into a mosque. But the overall arrangement of the building is quite true to the original arrangement. So, moving on from the two basilicas that we saw, we see that the longitudinal basilica is now rather square. When this is a rather truncated kind of rectangle, it has a directionality. The directionality we saw in the apse of San Vitale is here too. You have an apse. You have the wedge-shaped piers, just like San Vitale. There is an ambulatory here, again, just like San Vitale. But the directionality that we saw in San Vitale, which was only in the apse, is now more felt together with this entrance part, which leads the eye toward the apse, despite the scallops here, despite the oblique views that emanate from the wedge-shaped arches. And it's important to look at these examples because they're all eclectic variations of the effort of the architect to reach a domed basilica, which is the contribution, the biggest contribution that we have the 6th century Byzantine architect creating. And in the Saint Sergius and Bacchus, we can talk about a significant step in that direction. The basket capitals in the Saint Sergius and Bacchus are more lace-like and scalloped that you see here. The columns that you see here, again, have the sophisticated array of the interior articulation, not just a simple circle, but a plan which is scalloped out with the aid of the wedge-shaped piers. And again, polychromatic marble was used here, so we have a certain richness of the imperial rule being reflected to the church of Saint Sergius and Bacchus. But the height of the Justinianic arrangement is to be seen in the Hagia Sophia. The Hagia Sophia is not an ordinary church. It is not an ordinary church created for the people at large. It is a court church. And because it is a court church or a palatial church, it had a special significance, and it had a special connection with the palace, with the seat of the power of the Byzantine emperor. And for this reason, the conception of the Hagia Sophia, a bit like the conception of the pantheon, which was not an ordinary kind of temple, had to undergo a different process of the creation. And for this purpose, Isitorus and Anthemios were the two scientists, engineer, geometrician scientists, who were employed to design the church. Hence, it wasn't simply a work of masons, but the scientists of the time were employed by the court to come and create the plan of this very special imperial church. And it was special in an imperial sense because Justinian saw himself as consolidating the work that was begun by Constantine the Great. Hence, at the entrance of the Hagia Sophia, there is a mosaic panel showing the Christ child seated with, Virgin Mary. And on the one side, you see Constantine, and on the other side, you see Justinian. Constantine was the first Christianized Roman emperor. He was the one who built the city of Constantinople, a new project, which was a Christian project. And so Constantine is being depicted as presenting to Virgin Mary and Christ the city that he built, the fortified city that he built. And on the other side, Justinian, 200 years later, is making a church, a special church, the Hagia Sophia, and you see the dome quite well here, a church which is deserving of this very special city built by Constantine, and he is creating the church. And so the city and the church of the city, built 200 years later, are being presented to Virgin Mary and Christ the child. So the iconography is clear and simple. It is put at the entrance of the church, and before you enter the church of Hagia Sophia, you know what is being meant by this very imperial project. And you see that even though some of the details are rather schematic, the Hagia Sophia can be noticed quite well, but we might not be able to say that about the fortified city of Constantine. There is a considerable artistic license there. So, what was this grand imperial project in the service of the Christian religion? A domed basilica. I mean, looking at the plan of the Hagia Sophia, you see that it's very different than the longitudinal congregational basilicas of Sinapollinare Nuovo, Sinapollinare in Classe. It's also very different than the churches of St. John, which was compartmentalized, or the church of the St. Sergius and Bacchus, which was a bit like San Vitale. What we have here is a domed basilica, roofed by a dome, but a longitudinal basilica. So the entrance from the court leads you with a longitudinal axis that terminates in the apse. And in the apse was a mosaic of Virgin Mary. The structural system of the Hagia Sophia is unnervingly simple. You have 4 piers, and the entire structural system emanates from those four piers. You have galleries on both the sides corresponding to the aisles of a normal, traditional, anachronistic, longitudinal basilica. But the overall effect is very far from that of a longitudinal basilica because of the dome. And the way that has been achieved is because the dome is freestanding. There are no limitations to the dome on both sides. So what had happened in the Pantheon was having a cylinder underneath the dome, but in contrast, in the Hagia Sophia, the dome is made to open on both sides. The dome is made to expand with hemicycles on both sides, so it seems larger than it is. It becomes elongated, and the sphere of influence of the dome is thus expanded. Then the hemicycles are made to expand further with these scallops that you see on four sides. So you see that what we had seen in San Vitale, small volumes cascading out of the central volume, the central verticalized volume of San Vitale, are thought out in a far more monumental manner in the Hagia Sophia. They are made to cascade out to create a monumental, unprecedented interior space until that time. The effect is far more aggrandized than that of the Pantheon, even though the spans of the domes, physically speaking, are not that different. There's a 1 meter difference between them. But the effect, the overall effect of the Hagia Sophia dome is far, far more greater. So you see the overall system, the arches, spanning above the four piers, and then the expansion of the space, creating a domed basilica, which terminates in the apse in a longitudinal procession. When you have a square, frame, and you need to cover it with a curvilinear, element, you often need a transitional element. You have these triangular elements, and here it is shown in the form of steps. So these transitions are often done in the form of pendentives. Here you see the pendentives of the Hagia Sophia. So the overall dome, the perforations of the dome, bringing in the light. So what we had seen in the Senapollinare Nuovo and Senapollinare in Classe with the clerestory lighting is now being materialized in the perforation of the dome. The verticalized center is allowing the lighting of the interior with this ring of windows. Then there are further perforations on the sides, and the interior of the Hagia Sophia would have been articulated with these arrangements for the light to come in a diffused manner. And the cascading of the space, progressively flowing outward, creates an extraordinary spatially rich experience. And all of this was enhanced even further with the marble-clad the walls, surfaces, and then mosaics in various parts, which are being revealed now. The contrast of smooth textures and then the mosaic textures with or without figures made this into a building unprecedented until that time. And the critiques of Justinian sometimes, in a sarcastic way, say that the treasury of the palace was depleted because of the expenses of the marbles that were utilized within the Hagia Sophia. Whether that is true or not is one thing, but it does indicate the richness of the marbles that came in from all over the empire. The overall interior of the Hagia Sophia is often thought to be quite dense. And when you compare it with the diaphanous, almost transparent quality that was attained by Sinan several centuries later, you can see that the perforations are not that many. I mean, yes, the light did come in from various perforations, but the almost transparent quality that we see in the Süleymaniye or some of the other churches in the Ottoman period show us how much the walls became thinner and more transparent. So this is an architectural legacy that continues. I mean, from the Pantheon to the Hagia Sophia, and then to Sinan, the Ottoman architects. Okay, I think I will stop there.